He went into Africa with Alexander. Alexander now, Mr. the Great, who defeated, finally, after many years, they defeated the Kemetans, who had become weak in it was about 331, I believe, somewhere in there when they went into Kemet and defeated it. Now, Kemet had existed for 18,000 years prior, or 17,000 some odd years prior to that. No empire lasts forever. All of them come down at some time. But there is no empire on earth that can compare with that. Rome cannot. Rome didn't make it quite 1,000 years. Certainly the Greek states didn't last that long. There is no empire that can compare with the longevity of this African empire. None. And as we talk about later, Kush, which was probably far older than that, we will deal with. Now, when they went in, Alexander was one of those conquerors of the many people who came in and invaded and conquered our land. Alexander was one of those conquerors. We're dealing with document 1 here. Now, one of those conquerors who had received enough enlightenment to appreciate the fact that his people could not grow and become great unless they had the benefit of this knowledge that was already existing on the mother continent of our Cold Goo land in Kemet. So what was the first thing they began to do? Raid the library. They set up what was called research centers and began to steal. Raid the libraries under Aristotle. Now, we're talking about Herodotus and Aristotle, who Rogers says and others said that these people in ancient Kemet were black. They saw it. It wasn't something somebody told them. They saw it for themselves. And that these were the people who created and originated the Bible. That's what they said. They were there. They saw it for themselves. This Aristotle goes in and they start to steal, and after they stole all that they could kind of understand and put their names on it and plagiarize it and call it Greek philosophy, which does not exist. It is a non-existent body of knowledge. There is no such thing as Greek philosophy. It is African theology transmogrified and corrupted into Greek philosophy. The Greeks said that themselves, said that the Africans taught them everything they knew. Herodotus, the man we just talked about in history, said all of the gods came from Africa. We got all our knowledge from Africa. That's exactly what they said. They said they got it from Egypt. That was their word, which is Kemet. And as I said, we just looked on the map to find out where Egypt was, to make sure now where it is. Because they keep telling us in all these different places. And I want to make sure where it was. And it's still there on the African continent even today. So that's where they got their knowledge. In our Cold Goo land, which is the proper name for Africa, is where these Greeks got their knowledge. Now, after they got all that they could, they turned around and they burned up a library that possessed some 700,000 books. 700,000. 700,000. Let me put the figure up here. I want you to look at it. 700,000. Folk run around here talking about all you need is the Bible. That's the greatest knowledge. That's the first knowledge. That's the only knowledge. That's God's knowledge. There was 700,000 books before the Hebrew Bible was completed. Before the Hebrew Bible was completed, Africans had at least, this is 700,000 they burn up. Now that's not talking about what they took out, what was kept, what was taken off into the desert or other places to keep with them. That's 700,000 volumes. That was only in books. Knowledge. Knowledge that the world is still trying to get back to. And while I'm on that subject, that's not the only time. Every time they hit us, they went for our libraries. Because the one way to cripple a people and keep them from rising again is to hit what? Their source of knowledge, their source of science. And every time they hit us, they would hit them libraries and burn them up. The Romans, another 700,000, and Carthage, which they call Carthage, in the land of Hannibal, another 700,000. Another time, the Persians hit 500,000. And then hauled off about 1 million manuscripts that were scattered all over everywhere, Dr. Williams tells us. When the Semitic Arabs hit the original Kushite Arabs in Arabia, in Arabia, the Cushites who had been there before the Semitics got there. When the jet black, broad-nosed, thick-lipped, kinky-haired, big-butt Cushites, Arabia, who had been there for thousands of years before the Semitics got there, they burnt up so many books. Drusilla Houston tells us that it took 6 months for the fire to burn out. I know you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to keep saying it because I can't imagine any worse Holocaust than that. It's one thing to kill my body, which is bad, but when you take all of my knowledge, so now you not only killed me, you killed what? All my generations to come. Oh man, there's not one of us in here who wouldn't be willing to give their life for their children, their grandchildren, for future generations. It's just in our nature to do that. When it comes to a decision between your child's life or your grandchildren, your life, it's no question who goes. So when they took that, they took the life of your posterity. So what's a worse Holocaust than that? I can't think of anything. That is the Holocaust. Now they talking about, the Jews talking about patenting the word. If anybody could patent the word, there's only one race on earth that could do it. Could be us. Over to close to 200 million lost in the Middle Passage alone. But let me not get on that. And then tore up all my knowledge. At least the Jews knew they were Jews when they got finished with them. They burned a bunch of them up, 5 million of them in the oven. The rest of them knew they were Jews. They killed close to 200 million of us just bringing us over here. And then we confused about who we are. What's a greater Holocaust than that? When you confront, that's a lobotomy. You can perform surgery on somebody like that. So, why I haven't even gotten out of the first document yet, y'all. But this man, Aristotle, this despicable creature, with Alexander, was responsible for the beginning of the destruction of black civilization in terms of the destruction of our literature and science, which was the basis on which the Bible and all other holy books and all other things is predicated. So let's go back to the document and get back in focus. Y'all all right? Let me read it again to make sure we got it in focus now. The Bible really originated in Kemet, thank you, which is where? Okay, where the population, according to Herodotus and Aristotle, who we were just discussing, was black. It's no question. Wasn't colored, wasn't Asian, wasn't, what? Big lip, big butt, thick, the broad nose, can't get hair, black. The people who were there and saw it, we're dealing with document one, trying to answer the question, who wrote the Bible. It's taking us this long trying to answer that one question. But that one question, and answering that one question, we get into a whole lot of our own history. There's not a thing you can study on this earth that if you give your time and attention to, won't take you into great dimensions about our history. There was a white man who wrote that, and Anacalypsis, what was his name? Sir Godfrey Higgins. He said, every time I go to study the origin of anything, I always end up at, what? Something black. So you can't study nothing without studying black folks. So we have gotten a lot of information out of this one document. You think are we through with it now? Okay. Let's, let me make sure. Yeah, I think I've covered enough with it now. Now, let's move on to the second document. We have to use two documents to answer this question, who wrote the Bible? I'm going to let you answer it for me when we finish these documents, all right? Document 2, we read. It's right there in your source paper. Document 2. The entire Psalms and Hebrew Torah, in parentheses, Christian and Old Testament, are reeked with direct copies of works written, what? From the African, in parentheses, Egyptian, Nubian, Cushite, Ethiopian, sayings and teachings. This should not be surprising to anybody, since Moses and most of the earliest Hebrews in Genesis and Exodus were all Africans. They were born in Egypt and Ethiopia. Even the theory of monotheism, the belief of one God above all others, was taught in Egypt before the birth of Moses. Now, Doc Ben just gave us a lot to deal with there, didn't he? Now, you know what we just went through trying to get through Rogers.